everyone, and welcome to the Super Dandori Bros Podcast, Episode 3. We are your hosts, Leighton and Ryan, and today our topic is talking about our favorite Nintendo games from every Nintendo console, minus maybe a couple that we've just, like the Virtual Boy.
Yeah. Yeah, neither of us played that.
No, this is going to be definitely related to the consoles we played. Some of them, we'll let you see how it goes. It's going to be interesting. So, we've been playing Nintendo games for a while. We're not spring chickens, though. We weren't. I don't know. Some of them definitely came out before I was born, so I played them after their prime, but definitely, a lot of history there. Nintendo's made a lot of good games over the years.
Oh yeah, an incredible library. I think what goes to show is just right before the podcast, making my list of favorite games, I was having a really hard time for some of them, and some of them were consoles that I didn't even own, and I just ended up playing them after the fact, either on NSO or back when the Virtual Console was a thing on the Wii or the 3DS, and if that's the way that you experienced it first, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just glad these games are accessible and people can still enjoy the masterpieces that they are today.
Yeah, it's amazing how many of them hold up just even to this day, almost 40 years old, and they just the core foundation of the games are still fun,
Mm-hmm.
So where should we start? I guess we start from the very beginning, huh?
Yeah, we could go in chronological order.
I think that makes the most sense. I'm sorry if I mess up the chronological order. My list was just kind of more thrown together, so correct me if the next console is in the wrong order. But we'll start, of course, with the Nintendo Entertainment System, or Famicom, in Japan. Ryan, what was your favorite game from that system?
So the first one that I ever played when I was a kid, it was one of my friends that I'd known, literally almost since I was born, had a Nintendo Entertainment System and had Super Mario Brothers. That was how I first ended up getting to know the Nintendo Entertainment System, and that would have been my answer for the longest time until probably about a couple years ago when I finally played through in its entirety the original Metroid. That is now my actual answer. That game, as great as it is, and as much as Metroid Zero Mission was absolutely needed, if you're a Metroid fan and have not beaten the original Metroid, I would highly recommend doing so on NSO. And use a map as well. If you were one of those people who wants to do it without the map, I applaud you. For me, it was a great experience just going through, using the map, using the NSO quality of life features, because that game is hard. It does not have modern game design, but it was still an absolute blast to actually play through it and beat it for the first time. I'm a huge Metroid fan, and so for me, I had to pick Metroid.
That makes a lot of sense. It does hold up very well, despite being as old as it is. It started a franchise that we hold dear to our hearts.
Absolutely. It's a great game.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I'm gonna go with Super Mario Brothers 3.
Nice.
Mainly, I've played a few. I've obviously played the original Mario Brothers, Metroid, Zelda. But yeah, the Super Mario Bros. 3, you play that game, and it's almost hard to believe that game is running on an original Nintendo system, because it's just so much everything better than compared to the original. It's so much faster, cleaner, visually. It's an incredible masterpiece of the game, and it has a special place in my heart because so I didn't play it on the original NES. I played it on the Wii because back a long time ago, I used to write a blog on IGN, and we had a community of people we were very close with, and I had not played the game, and there was a user there who learned that, and he was just shocked. He was horrified. And so he gifted me that game on the Virtual Console.
Oh, wow.
I still remember his username. Hold on. I say that, and it's the Rolling Zeppelins.
Nice.
He's a great guy. And if you're listening, I remember you. And I remember playing it. I was like, whoa, this is what have I been missing? I understood why he was so adamant that I play it. Great game. Definitely a showpiece for the original Nintendo system, showing what it was capable of.
I think that's actually a really cool thing that you've observe there, which is that Nintendo has literally, like, since the beginning, always done a great job of squeezing every last drop that console, like whatever console they're working on, has to offer in order to have like the best games possible. And they're still doing that today. And I think it's impressive that even as far back as the NES, like they essentially had that mentality.
Absolutely. No, they care a lot. They have a passion for what they're doing. So I think that's really shows in all their games. And yeah, they definitely have gotten only better since that time and era, as far as squeezing every byte of data out of those things. So,
Absolutely.
yes.
So I think we should move on. We got a lot to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next one, I guess, would be Game Boy, technically.
Yep. I think so.
I'll start this time. So I'm going to just be honest. I didn't grow up with a Game Boy. I didn't get one. I got to play kind of vicariously through other people, but I have played some games since, and I did have some experiences. If I were to pick one game, this is really tough. It's probably going to be the original Pokemon, just because of the impact it had on all the other Pokemon games I played. It was definitely pioneering at its time on that hardware. But yeah, I played it more after. I played it like secondhand through people, but it wasn't like I had a lot of experience. I never actually beat the game. Weirdly, I beat the remake, but not the original Pokemon. But how about you, Ryan? I think you have more experience with it.
I do. So my first like actual console that I had was a Game Boy Color, and so I got to take advantage of the backwards compatibility. I mean, if you want to consider them different, I do consider them different. And so for me, I actually picked Pokemon Yellow because I was a huge fan of the Pokemon series as a kid, and sort of getting to essentially like pseudo replay Ash's storyline through. I know it's not actually Ash that you're playing as, but you know, as a kid, like I don't know, you can't really tell the difference. And so for me, like that was just really cool, and I loved all the additions that it had. But funny enough, like in order to complete the Pokedex, which I didn't do until I was an adult for the first generation of Pokemon, like Yellow essentially adds absolutely nothing. You need both red and blue in order to do it, and having Yellow doesn't help you at all, like in any way. I mean, maybe it might make it a tiny bit faster depending on your exact route, but you would still, like, in terms of the minimum number of games, you need red and blue. And so in that way, it wasn't particularly helpful, but I think it's overall just a phenomenal game.
Yeah, I mean, I remember exactly seeing that game, other people playing it, and just like, wow, you just feel like you're playing the show. And the fact that you get all the starters is like such a huge deal back then. Whereas, you know, when you start with only one, you're like, oh, I got to pick one. And I was a Charizard guy, so I always picked Charmander.
Oh, yeah.
Even though he's like literally the worst Pokemon to have for the first few gyms. But if you could power through that, he's super cool. But yeah, it was super fun having a little Pikachu following you. That was just like, I don't know. It's so funny to think of it now, but back then that was just mind blowing to have your little guy following you and get to say, you know, interact with him. So very great game.
Absolutely. So I guess I'll move forward, and we're going to consider Game Boy Color a separate console because you know the form factor of the cartridge changed, and you couldn't go back and play color games on the original Game Boy because the form factor didn't work. But for me, I'm going to pick the first game that I ever got for the Game Boy Color, which is Pokemon Gold. Surprise, surprise. I think like Gold is just such a fantastic sequel in pretty much every way, in my opinion. I think, again, it's another example of Nintendo like squeezing everything that they could out, because my understanding is in order to get Kanto like into the game, they had to make all kinds of cuts to Kanto itself, and specifically in Cinnabar Island. But like they wanted the ultimate Pokemon experience in that, and I like for that I salute them. I think that that's great. You know, it improved in Pokemon in pretty much every way. Introduced like 2 new types, held items, breeding, sexes for Pokemon, like all kinds of day-night cycle, all kinds of things. Some of which didn't even like come back in the next generation, but had to be added back like a couple generations later. Like truly, like Gold was ahead of its time in my opinion. Also, it wasn't nearly as buggy as Gen 1 Pokemon.
Yeah, they definitely like fixed a lot of stuff with that game. It blew my mind when I found out you had both worlds in that game. It just doubled down on everything. It was the ultimate sequel to a game that was already massively popular. I don't know how they did it. It's funny that Gold is your favorite because I actually put Pokemon Silver as my favorite.
Nice.
Because that's the one I played, and eventually I played Pokemon Sapphire. Well, not Sapphire. Sorry. No. What is it? Crystal.
Yeah, Crystal.
Crystal. Thank you. Sapphire was the next one. I did play Pokemon Sapphire, but yeah. But Silver was the one I played because I liked, I don't know, Lugia because of the Pokemon movie. Again, heavily influenced by the Nintendo's. The marketing worked. Let's just put it that way.
Yep. Absolutely.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
so I feel like I can't add too much more than what you said, though. I mean, just both games really are phenomenal. Just, yeah, all the things you said. It's the breeding, the day-night cycle all blew my mind. The extra types, which are still super cool to this day. I think Steel and Dark type are really cool. And it was actually, they didn't add any new types for basically ever. Like, it was the only time they like went from one game, then they added 2 types, and then it wasn't until, I can't remember what gen it was, that they added Fairy.
Gen 6, yeah.
Yeah.
They added Fairy.
It was like quite a ways down. So for the longest time, that was just it. And it was pretty fun. So
Absolutely. Little bit of trivia for those listening. I used my first Master Ball in an Ursaring. Just saying. Yeah. That's how intelligent I was as a kid. I was like, ooh, bear? I'm going to throw a Master Ball at it. Because I ran out of all the other Pokeballs.
I'll get more of those, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it was a good system. But then, wait, so now Game Boy Color. Now we're moving into what's N64.
Yeah, N64.
That's when I really started getting more aware of video games and was a lot more. I didn't have one, but again, I was like kind of a lot more connected to video games, more aware of what was happening with Nintendo and more of the franchise knowledge. So for you, what was it like for you when the N64 was out?
So I never owned one either, but a lot of my friends owned it, and so I would go over and like play a little bit of it. But 3D gaming, that took a little bit for me to get used to, even as a kid. And I had a friend who held the control stick on the N64, like as if it was a pencil. Like, he didn't use his thumb for it. He would like grip it with 3 fingers, like the tip of the control stick, and move it around. And he's like, oh, this is obviously the way that you play this game. And I'm like, this makes 0 sense to me. I'm using my thumb. And turns out I was right for once. But that was essentially my experience with the N64, was like going over and playing like a couple levels of like Mario 64 or like Star Fox or something. And it was great. And I didn't own one until after I got married, because my wife had one when she was a kid that she ended up sort of inheriting, and it's plugged into our bedroom TV, and we still play it from time to time.
Isn't that amazing that the system, that's almost, we talk about the testament to Nintendo's games, but we don't always talk about just how insanely good their systems are and how long they last.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
I also realized that I didn't actually say what my favorite game for it was. So my favorite game for the N64 is going to be Rayman 2.
Really?
Yes, I knew that was going to be a surprise. I love Rayman 2. I think it is the best Rayman game, hands down, which I don't actually think is too controversial. There haven't been that many, and some of them aren't really that great. But I love Rayman 2. I think it's a phenomenal platformer, and I think a really good example of a mascot platformer from that time that isn't strictly a Nintendo IP. I know we're a Nintendo-focused podcast, but at the same time, like, I think it just goes to show how good the N64 was, that like my favorite game on it is actually like a mascot platformer that isn't even a Nintendo game.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beautiful thing, is that these Nintendo systems still harbored some incredible games from other developers, and so I mean, despite being Nintendo fans, we do like games that are made by other people too. So I never actually played Rayman 2, to be honest. I feel sad now that I haven't, because I mean, it hasn't been on any. I don't think they've had it on Virtual Console or NSO, have they?
No, the port, the most recent port that I'm aware of, I haven't looked it up in many years, but the most recent port that I'm aware of was for the iPod Touch.
Oh,
around the time, like around 2010, I think.
Wow.
And so I played it on that. That was terrible. That was a terrible experience. Virtual controls for Rayman were not optimal.
I don't think they've gotten any better. I have a hard time playing on handhelds, any handheld port of anything. But that's just me. Yeah.
So what's your favorite game?
Well, I mean, I'm just gonna list off a few that before I list off my favorite. Like,
Okay.
I recently beat Majora's Mask, and I think that's one of the best Zelda games ever made, and I will stand by that. I think everyone should play that. It's so radically different from any Zelda game, and I'm just I would love to play it again. Pokemon Snap was so much fun for me. I have so many good memories going to friends' houses and playing that game. It just blew my mind. It just felt like you were in the game. I thought it was super cool. The original Smash Brothers, I have a lot of memories playing at friends' houses and multiplayer. That was just, again, one of those things where it's just like, couldn't believe it was real. Having these Nintendo characters all in the same game fighting each other just felt like a fever dream. And then lastly is like GoldenEye. Is really, like, again, whenever friends' houses, lots of fun multiplayer memories. But my favorite game by far on the N64 is Star Fox 64.
Yep.
It's
so good.
It's the so game. Despite not having an N64, I put so many hours in that game at other people's houses. I had a friend who had it, and I realized now looking back, like, I was a terrible friend. But because I had no video games at home, I was like, this is my chance to play. So I would, like, they'd be all outside playing at the pool, and I'd be inside playing on his N64, and I beat like the entirety of Star Fox 64 at his house. And
nice.
I've played it again on NSO. I have the remake on 3DS, and I still, to this, I mean, it's definitely the best Star Fox. They've never gotten a better one. It's peak, gaming. It's just so intuitive. I love all the little hidden secrets, the cheesy voice lines, the music, the controls, everything about it was just super amazing. I remember when I first discovered you can go to first person, like into the cockpit, I was just like blown away. I'm like, this is basically a flight simulator now.
Yeah, pretty much.
So yeah.
And the multiplayer was fun too.
Oh, and the multiplayer, yes, that was so underrated. I played so much of that. I mean, it was definitely like I think flying was definitely the better option. The tanks, I don't think, were really the best option. But yeah, I remember so much dogfighting in that game. Great game. So yeah, that's my favorite for the N64, the one that stuck with me, and one I still go back to today.
Yeah, that's an absolutely phenomenal game. But now I think it's time that we move on to what I personally consider to be the console with probably the greatest lineup of games besides maybe the Switch, in my personal opinion. That's the Game Boy Advance. I think that the Game Boy Advance has an incredible library of games, especially considering really how short of a time it was Nintendo's handheld. Like, it got superseded by the 3DS very quickly. I'm sorry, not 3DS, the DS very quickly. But despite that, like, it had an incredible library.
Yeah. No, people forget just how short of a life that system had.
Yeah, which is wild when you consider, like, how many good games are on it.
How many good games, and then it sold like 80 million units in like the 3 years it existed. And I think it's literally the best. If you look at it just from a system sold per year, I think it's probably their best-selling system. And I know that's hard,
crazy
compared to the Switch, where your Switch is like 145, but like it's been out for almost 8 years.
Well, and also, like, you have to imagine that, like, video games are now much more mainstream, like, today than they were back then, and so the potential market for it now is much higher. So, like, the market penetration in that way for the Game Boy Advance was actually extremely impressive.
Yeah. No, but that just goes to, again, what you said with the library, right? It had such an insanely good library. That's why it sold so well. And to be fair too, it wasn't until the PSP that there was really any real competition for the Game Boy. So in a way, it was kind of like, yeah, I mean, if you want a handheld gaming system, there's no iPhone, there was no other portable gaming system at the time. It was just a Game Boy Advance. So that, but again, Pokemon was on it, and all the Mario, Zelda, everything was on it. And though I wonder if it sold really well too, because maybe people are buying a bunch to have as controllers for the GameCube attachment.
Possible. It's certainly possible. But if I had to pick one game, and it's cheating, and I think that immediately gives away what I'm going to pick, it's Golden Sun. Specifically, 1 and 2. They're so good, and they are essentially one game. It's 2 parts of one game, and so I want to call it one game, and it is our podcast, so we get to make up the rules. But if I did have to pick a single cartridge, I would have to go, and I know you and I are going to disagree on this, I'd have to go with the original because I played it so many times. The Lost Age in every way is a better game, like easily. And I 100% like will concede that. However, there's just something about setting out from Vale with Isaac and Garrett and then meeting Ivan immediately and getting Maya and everything. Like, there's something about the original Golden Sun that is magical for me, and I think it's just like part of my childhood.
It's funny.
And I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's funny for me because my first time playing Golden Sun was I beat the second game before the first. I didn't know there was a first game. I was just really confused. So I'm playing as Felix, and then then I finally realized, oh, there's a first game, and then I'm like, wait, Felix is the bad guy? I'm so confused, and it was like, but I mean, it's an incredible games. It's hard to even believe that they were real because they were just so amazing on the system.
Yeah, it was nuts how good it is. The score for it is absolutely incredible. It's the same guy who did he actually did the score for Dark Souls 2 and also for the Mario and like the Mario golf and tennis games. It's the same composer. And like they're incredible scores. Like I'll still play some of them while doing dishes. I kind of wish they'd come to Nintendo Music service, but incredible soundtrack. Absolutely love it. I desperately wish it would get the Advance Wars like 1+2 boot camp treatment and just get like remakes on the Switch. I know it's never happening, but it deserves it. Like it's a great game and deserves it. I know the market wouldn't support it, but if remakes were done for art's sake and just a game's merit of just how good of a game it is, like it absolutely would deserve it.
Yeah, it's like I think if Nintendo wanted a nice, easy, sale, like they could do that, like just remake them, but yeah, it just depends on if they can market it right, because it's hard for us to remember. Like, those games came out so long ago now. They're 20-plus-year-old games, which, I mean, so many people, only our generation remembers it. So, but, I mean, I'm in your camp. I wish they'd remake it or something, or someone would, even a fan remake. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Man, it's so funny. I'm looking at my list, and I'm still haven't 100% decided, but I think if I had to pick one game that I was like really like stood out to me, it's got to be Fire Emblem.
Yes, I almost picked Fire Emblem. It's so good.
Yeah, and it's a tough choice. I mean, the selection of GBA games, like you said, is so good. So many. I mean, I was thinking Metroid Fusion is really close. Minish Cap is really close.
Oh, Minish Cap is nuts. I love it.
Pokemon Sapphire, even though I wouldn't say it's like the best Pokemon game, like it was a game I poured so many hours to. I mean, I got so many level 100 Pokemon in that game. I mean, I was so into it. I wanted to create my own Elite Four with my friends, where we do like little secret bases, and we each put ourselves with like different types. I was going to be the water type gym. I had like a level 100 Kyogre and like all these, and a level 100 Swampert, and I was so ready to be like this powerhouse gym. But no, my favorite is Fire Emblem because it was such a different game than anything I'd played. I still think it's got I love the characters and the story. I love the progression. It's such a simple, like, and Fire Emblem's changed so much now, but it was just such a raw, simple game at its core. It's so accessible. And I go back to it even today, and I'm just like, man, this game still holds up. It's still fun because you don't feel like you have to relearn everything. The concepts and the gameplay is very easy to pick up. And also the idea of like permadeath with your characters like destroyed me as a child. So I can't tell you how many times I turned off my game system, especially on the second to last level where the guys keep respawning. Yeah. Though I eventually, like, because I memorized that game, I knew exactly which people to send to which spots, and then I just farmed XP off it until literally, because if you keep going, they will eventually stop. And so I just went to the point where the game just gave up and stopped spawning guys. And then all my guys were super leveled up for the final fight. But yeah, super great game. I don't know if I'd want a remake or not. I think the game is, because like the new 3D games, I don't feel like I don't like the animations as much. Whereas you look at the animations for the fights, it's one of the only games only Fire Emblem games I'll keep the animations on because they just look so cool. Whereas the new games are like, they just feel like filler. I mean, they're
Yep.
cool, but they're not as exciting. They're not as like anime, like super over the top crazy. So, but yeah, that's my favorite game. I mean, for you, Ryan, I mean, I mentioned a few of my other favorites, and I'd love to hear some of your runner ups as well, though, just because it's a system that deserves to, it deserves it.
Absolutely. So I think Fire Emblem would absolutely be one of my runner-ups, specifically 7, the one that you're talking about. I also really like Fire Emblem 8, Sacred Stones. I know that that's like a less popular opinion, but I liked it because it was very different from Fire Emblem 7. Like Fire Emblem 7, like you were progressing through the story whether you liked it or not, whereas 8 was a little bit more casual. Like you could go like farm XP in a few other places, and I sort of like that because it felt like I was actually in charge of an army, like moving around and making decisions. So I actually really like that. But so that would definitely be on there. Fusion would be on there. Zero Mission would be on there. Like both Metroid games, they're phenomenal. I never played much of Mario Kart Super Circuit, but I did really enjoy that. So even the Mario Kart game on it is really good. Some of my runner-ups, which aren't Nintendo games, are the Mega Man Battle Network series. That was a really great series of games. I kind of wish we would get a reboot of that, but I don't know. Well, no, Capcom makes decent games still. Like they're fine. So I don't know. Like those are some of my runner-ups. And I'm sure like more will come to me as I think about it. But oh, you know what? Actually, there's one. It's never released in the United States, and so therefore, I've never played it, but I've heard Mother 3 is an excellent game. Perhaps one of my favorites if I had played it. No, like Mother 3 is a phenomenal game. That is absolutely going to be on my list.
Yeah, I actually forgot that came out for GBA. That's so wild. Yeah. That game deserves Mother 3 Nintendo. Come on.
Yeah.
Just all of them. Just release all 3. Remake all 3 with like a little claymation style. Man, come on. It's easy money. Easy money. Get Grezzo on it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would kill for that. That'd be so good.
It's so hard to move away from the GBA, but we do need to move on to another system that I feel like didn't quite. I mean, well, it's getting more appreciation now, but definitely was one of Nintendo's, sadly, one of their lesser selling systems, and that is the GameCube. But it's hard to believe that.
It's funny because as far as like a console gimmick standpoint, there weren't that many risks. I feel like the risks came in how they treated their IPs. Like making Metroid a first-person shooter, making, the follow-up to Majora's Mask / Ocarina of Time be like a very cartoony Zelda. Changing 3D Mario to be, a power wash simulator game, essentially. Luigi's Mansion was like totally weird. Star Fox ended up becoming an action-adventure game. Like they really took some interesting risks during that time with their IPs and like really changed up the formula in a way that honestly I don't really feel like we've gotten with any other Nintendo console since. So I feel like that's where their innovation, their risk-taking went in that particular generation. And honestly, I feel like it paid off for a lot of them. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so for me, because I have to, I mean, we are the Super Dandori Bros Podcast, but I'm going to make Pikmin 2 my favorite game of GameCube. And Pikmin 2 is an absolutely brutal game in the end game. It is rough. I played through it and I finally got through the game. I had to turn off my GameCube 100 times or whatever, but I finally got through the game without losing a single Pikmin. It's extremely difficult. But I love Pikmin 2. I even after I beat it and collected all the treasures as a kid, I would just go and play extra days just to grow more Pikmin. Like that's just how much fun I had with it. But Pikmin is probably my favorite Nintendo franchise. So in that way, it's probably quite predictable and I'm probably quite biased. But that's my favorite. What about you?
So I've played Pikmin 1 and 2. Thank you, Ryan. Because I got to borrow the Switch versions, and I definitely really like Pikmin 1, and I like Pikmin 2 until the end game. And so
it's so bad.
It's so rough. And after having played Pikmin 3 and 4, it's even harder to go back now. So if I'd grown up with it, I might have been a little bit more partial, but definitely great games. But if I had to pick my favorite game, it's one I've beaten multiple times, and I just love it to death, and it's got to be Metroid Prime 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you would probably say Prime 2, and I
Yeah, I
haven't.
like Prime
I
2 better.
still haven't beat Prime 2, and that's on me. I keep hoping that Nintendo is going to release the remaster, and then I can like enjoy it in that. But no, Prime 1 is just, it's like you said, it's that risk taking, the risk reward, and it paid off in spades. It was
Mhm.
such a cool reimagining of that franchise. Retro poured so much love into that game, from an art standpoint, from a technical standpoint, from a gameplay standpoint, just from a creative change, like basically morphing all these abilities, no pun intended, um, from the old 2D games into 3D was just so well done. And it's just, yeah, the music, oh, the music, it's so, everything about it's so good. And I've played the original, I've played the remaster, and I love the remaster. Oh my gosh, they
Oh,
did such a
the
good job.
remaster's phenomenal. That really is the definitive way to play. If you haven't played Metroid Prime, play the remaster. It's $40.
Yeah.
Just do it. It's better than the original in every way, except for a handful of the lighting effects. But overall, it is like an absolutely gorgeous
It
game. Like, do it.
it fixes everything pretty much as far as like, control wise. It's definitely a lot more intuitive. I mean, it's definitely. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say fix really. The only thing I would say it fixes the controls, because the original controls, while totally usable and were totally fun, I played
Hmm.
with those controls, but the new dual analog controls are definitely just so much more, like so much easier to use. And then visually, of course, it's just eye candy on the new system. It's hard to believe it's running on the system it's running on. It's again retro, showing us what kind of magical things they can do. But yeah, that's definitely my top game. If I had to put some runner-ups though, because I love mentioning runner-ups, but it's just Wind Waker, of course.
Hmm.
Phenomenal game, super underrated.
Yep.
Um, and
The Wii U
Melee.
version is better.
The new version is better. Don't get me wrong. Nintendo, for the most part, every time they go back to a game, they definitely improve it. Not just as graphically, but they fix controls, they fix gameplay mechanics. They definitely do a great job of that. But Wind Waker, still on the GameCube, holds up
Hmm.
today. It just looks great, plays great. Melee, of course, is one of the. It's kind of, even though Smash Bros. Started on N64, Melee is what really made it what it is today, and it is a
Absolutely.
phenomenal game. And then what else did I? And I had put Pikmin 1 and 2, and I'm sure there's a game I'm forgetting, but yeah, those were the main ones that stood out to me.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. So I realized we made a pretty big error. We skipped over Super Nintendo. I just realized.
Holy cow! How did we do that? Oh, because
So
my list.
because yeah, on my list I was snaking down and I ended up skipping over Super Nintendo. Do we want to go back and we got
Yes,
to go
we
back and
have
do
to.
that real
We
quick?
have to. Holy cow!
Yeah.
Sorry, listeners. If someone out there was listening and be like,
Yeah, they're like, these
guys,
guys are so stupid.
and they call themselves Nintendo fans. It's like, no, I just wrote a bad list.
I designed mine terribly.
Oh my gosh,
Okay,
Dandori. Oh my gosh.
I know, right? Yeah, it was all part of the strategy.
Yeah, no. We just
Um,
want to draw more attention to what a great console it was.
yeah, exactly. Do you want me to go?
Yeah, I'll let you start.
Okay, so the reason why it prompted that is because I was going to say that Metroid Prime is the Super Metroid. Like it's essentially the same design as Super Metroid in terms of like the next upgrade could be literally anywhere. In that way, Metroid Prime 2 is more Zelda dungeon like focused, where you sort of like go to an area and spend a lot of time there. As a like Metroid Prime, it's like the way that the Metroid podcast, one of the guys, Doomino Crossing on it, like describes it, and I think it's a perfect description, is he calls it the road trip style, where like your upgrade could be literally anywhere. The reason why I bring that up is because my choice for Super Nintendo is Super Metroid. I have played through it like 3 or 4 times now, which is probably like a criminally low number. It just had its, I think, like 30th anniversary last year. It is an incredible game. That being said, I think it does deserve a remake. Like I absolutely think it does. I think some people disagree on that, but I think the controls could be updated, and I think the map could be slightly tweaked. And other than that, you could absolutely leave it alone, and it's like a phenomenal game. I just think the controls are just a little bit too wonky, and the map is a little bit too outdated for modern gaming standards. But other than that, it's an absolutely incredible game. One of the best games, probably one of the best games ever made, to be honest. But certainly my favorite on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah. No, I mean it set the bar for atmosphere and gameplay and puzzles and everything. It's just, yeah, holds up. Except for the controls. That's the one thing it definitely, especially after you've played modern Metroid games, it's hard to go back to when you're so used to certain button placements. But overall, great game. If I had to pick my favorite, it's going to be A Link to the Past.
I thought it might be.
Yeah, it's just, I've beaten that game so many times, and it still to this day holds up. The music, the puzzles, everything. I mean, I've beaten it on Super Nintendo, GBA, NSO. My kids have watched me beat it. I'm just like, I think it's the best Zelda game to start with, personally. Mm-hmm. Like, if you just want to get into it, it has all that you expect from a Zelda game. It's a little more on the rails. Like, for my kids, I want them to kind of start with that, even though my son's really trying to start playing Breath of the Wild, and he hasn't left the plateau yet, so we'll see how that goes.
Good luck.
But yeah, it's just a great game. It's just the one I've poured the most hours into. Runner-ups would be Super Mario World and Yoshi's Island, two just crazy good games. And I guess also I'd put like Super Mario Kart, despite the fact I don't think it holds up super well. I remember I have a lot of good memories playing with some friends on that. So,
if I had to pick a runner-up, like, what it is for me.
For
Super Nintendo, it's Earthbound.
Yeah,
it's Earthbound. I just played through it again. It's so good.
Yeah, no, it's such a shame that franchise didn't get more time in the sun. But
yeah, sadly,
well,
maybe one day. I mean, there are a lot of fan remakes that are of the Mother series that are going on right now, which I think is great.
Well, I think Nintendo knows they have something special, because I remember when they announced, what was it? It was Earthbound. What's the first game that they gave it a new name for American audience?
Earthbound Beginnings.
Beginnings. Yeah. There you go. They made that a pretty big announcement when that came out. They were like, "Here we go," and everyone was like, it was like a big part of their. I think it was E3 or it was a direct. I can't remember at what time, but that was a big deal. So they kind of know. So I feel like it's someday they're gonna remake Earthbound. They have to. I hope so. It's just gotta happen.
I'm playing through Earthbound Beginnings for the first time right now, and it is a desperate need for a remake. But it's cool being able to go back after playing 2 and 3. And like playing 1 for the first time again. Like, I would highly recommend doing it with a guide, otherwise you are going to be running around like fighting random encounters for the longest time to figure out where to go. But that one is worthy of a playthrough on NSO if you're looking for an NES game to try.
Yeah.
All right, so now I think we're back on track.
Sorry, Super Nintendo fans, we messed up, but we redeemed ourselves. Hopefully.
All right, now moving on to the DS. Do you want to take this one, since I did Super Nintendo first?
Yeah, I'll start with this one. DS was, that was a special system. My favorite game from that system, and I made sure I would never lose the cart for this, and I think Ryan knows exactly what it is. It's Elite Beat Agents.
Yep, 100%.
I don't know if everyone listening, I hope everyone listening knows what that game is. If you don't know what Elite Beat Agents is, it is a musical rhythm game where basically people cry out for help, and there's these 3 agents are sent there to basically sing and dance, and then the situation gets better. that is the whole summary of the game. They're like really crazy scenarios. They have these like comic book style videos happening, and based on how your rhythm's going, will show like if the scene's getting better or worse. It's pop culture songs. It's not like custom songs. It's my brain is literally blanking, even though I should know all these songs. But like
you've got Earth, Wind and Fire's September in there. You've got Skater Boy in there. You've got ABC's. What else you got? Jumpin' Jack Flash. Like, there are all kinds of songs in there that are absolutely phenomenal. Like, pretty much the whole soundtrack is great. There's songs that you recognize, and like, it's hard to describe exactly like what it is. So because it's on the DS, you're using the touchscreen, and essentially like circles will pop up in a specific order that you need to tap them at a specific time, and you tap it essentially to the beat of the song, and behind the circles you can see the agents dancing. It's phenomenal. highly recommend. Like if you're even like curious about it, like just look up a gameplay video and you'll see what we're talking about.
It's amazing to watch, but definitely a whole different thing to play. Definitely deserved a sequel, never got it, and it's probably due to licensing and stuff like that and sales numbers. But I played so many hours. I remember like sneaking my DS so that I could play it at night, and it took so long to beat the final level on the hardest difficulty, but I did it. I was so proud of myself. It was at like 2 a.m. I couldn't celebrate with anyone, but I was just like so pumped. Definitely a game that I feel like the difficulty just ramps up at just the perfect level. So every time you go up another rung, the final difficulties. Actually, this is going to sound really weird to say, but I think the second to hardest difficulty is actually harder for me to play than the hardest one, because the hardest one, the dots pop up really quick, so you have to react quickly. But because of that, my brain's able to process. It's able to see it faster. It's not cluttering up the screen, whereas the second hardest is the same number of dots, but they appear slower. So you have more of them on the screen, so it's harder to know which one in what order to tap. So,
yeah, because it's numbered, like your brain essentially has to process the symbol and not just like, hey, you've literally got a split second just to press the new circle that popped up.
Yeah. So, yeah, because otherwise the other one, it's just like almost muscle memory. And maybe it's because I played that difficulty that the next one was easier, because I already had the muscle memory, just faster. But yeah, super, super great game. I actually, my touchscreen got like, I don't know how to put it. It like basically didn't work as well. It got the calibration would never work because of that game. I played it so much, I had to send my DS in to get the screen fixed and brought back. And then I put like a special screen protector on it because I was afraid, because I was scratching up the screen from and it was only using the stylus, but it just eventually wore. Because there's especially that one part of the game where there's that little wheel that you'd spin really, really fast. And that would my screen was getting wrecked from that. So.
Yeah, absolutely destroyed.
Now, would you say, no, I don't know. I don't know if this is your favorite game too, though. Did I get that correct?
So I did list it. However, because like it would just be easy for me to just say like EVA, I'm going to go with my runner up. Because Elite Agents is my favorite game on the DS. My second favorite is Trauma Center Under the Knife 2.
Yes.
And the reason why is because those games totally changed my life. I'm not going to explain exactly why, but I absolutely love those games. They are so goofy. And like I don't know, so I remember the issue of Nintendo Power that came out, like back when the DS was launching, that was like, here are all the touchscreen exclusive games that have been announced, and Trauma Center was one of them. And I remember going to my mom and I'm like, hey, this sounds great. Like, it's a surgery simulator. Like, do you think that like I could have that? And my mom's like, absolutely not, because surgery is bloody and no blood or guts in your video games. And I'm like, really? So then it took me until like I was an adult and I went to the used games section of like a GameStop and I found like the original cartridge, and then I played it, loved it, bought the second one. I think it's even better. That is, I'll put that as my favorite game on the DS. It's not strictly a Nintendo game, but Rayman 2 wasn't either, and since it meant so much to me, I'm going with Trauma Center Under the Knife 2.
Oh, yeah. I mean, did it ever come to anything other than Nintendo? So isn't it basically a Nintendo game?
Well, yeah, I mean, it basically is a Nintendo exclusive, but I think it's Atlas, published and owned, right. Sadly.
But that was an era of games, right? When they just had so many cool little quirky... isn't that when... oh my gosh, I'm forgetting. Ace Attorney?
No, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney
basically started becoming popular too. Like, there's all these quirky, fun, like, career games.
Yeah, just randomly. Then Nintendo's like, "Hey, let's make a console with a touchscreen," and everyone's like, "Let's do every career simulator, but make it anime."
Right. Well, I mean, and even then, it was like some of the most popular things are careers, like Nintendogs, right? You're taking care of a pet, like they're all jobs. They just turned jobs into video games. Cooking Mama. Yeah, crazy. I'm trying to think. Oh, another runner-up game I have to mention just because of its meaning to me. Prime Hunters. Metroid Prime Hunters.
Yes.
Super underrated game. Obviously, it doesn't hold up as well now because definitely the graphics were pushing it on the DS. Though it's pretty impressive what they got on there. But I bought the DS when it came out, and it came with the Hunter's demo, which I still have. And I played the crap out of that with my brother because you could do multiplayer. And then when Prime, the actual full game came out, I bought a copy, my brother bought a copy, and we used to play locally with bots. We play online. Actually, it was like our first time really having an online multiplayer game because we didn't have anything else. And so we finally convinced my mom to get Wi-Fi because, back then Wi-Fi not everyone had Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I didn't have it. I learned how to do it from you.
That's right. Holy cow. Yeah, I was like, I got a wireless, I think it was a wireless B or wireless G router, which at the time was like super good. And yeah, I played the heck out of that game. Yeah, still have it. Yeah, super good. That was kind of like like for some people, Quake was their big multiplayer game, or like, when they were kids, and like that was my big online multiplayer game it had kind of a Quake vibe to it too, actually, but
Yeah.
it was just super fun. Yeah. But and there's other games too I loved, of course. But
Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing, yeah, that was super amazing. I don't know why I've blanked on that. It's a super amazing game on DS.
That, like, right before, like, as I was about to say my game, I actually had Animal Crossing Prime. That was it. And then all of a sudden, Trauma Center popped in my head. I'm like, no, wait, that's my favorite.
Yeah. Also, Mario Kart 7. Oh, no, Mario Kart DS
yeah.
was really good.
That was so good. That was such a good Mario Kart.
It was a great Mario Kart. One of the best Mario Karts. I didn't mind the Zelda games, but they definitely are not my top Zelda games. Like, I thought they were fun and very clever. Not my favorite. I wasn't a big fan. I actually kind of started losing interest in Pokemon at the time because going from Sapphire, which was like the game progressed really fast. It felt like everything was very snappy, to Diamond and Pearl, where everything felt way slower. Once they moved everything to the touchscreen, it felt like, I don't know what it was, but everything, the menus and everything, it just felt like such a slow game. I had a hard time playing it.
It was very slow.
I don't know. I feel like there's another game I'm totally blanking on for the DS, and it's driving me nuts. But
It'll come back to us later, I'm sure.
yeah. All right. Well, during that era was also when Nintendo was doing their Blue Ocean strategy with the DS, which then leads into the Wii.
Ah, the Wii.
What a system.
So good.
I remember when it was Nintendo Revolution, and then it got renamed to Wii, and I just thought, what are you doing, Nintendo? What are you doing?
The Revolution sounded awesome.
It sounded awesome, but then, yeah, it's funny because at the time, everyone was making urine jokes, but now it is one of the most beloved systems of all time.
Yeah.
It's actually was their best-selling home console before the Switch. And in the Switch, you could almost argue isn't a home console, despite obviously having the capability. It's a very powerful handheld that can also be used as a home console. But the Wii is their best-selling standalone home console. It changed the world.
Yeah. It was, and honestly, I feel like you can attribute the rise in gaming popularity to the Wii in at least some part because of its appeal to the casual market. And I think that really helped it, especially with generations who maybe like grew up like with a Wii that was bought casually, and then were like, oh hey, like what other things do video games have to offer, or like whatever. I bet you any amount of money that a lot of the people who are hardcore gamers now like grew up with a Wii that was like incidentally bought,
Well, I know if you look at a lot of the YouTubers who are Nintendo fans, the Wii was for them their system, and so the Wii did a lot to bring in a lot of people. It has a special place in my heart because I remember, I was so wanting a system. I had handhelds, I had the Game Boy Advance, I had the DS, but then like the Wii, I wanted a home console. And I tried to get the GameCube before, and actually my mom was like gonna let me get it, but then by the time we were ready to get it, the Wii was announced. And they had the demo stations at the malls, and they just happened to have one at a mall near us. So I convinced my parents to go look. My dad was not really into video games, but he saw like us playing Wii Sports, and he's like, "Wait, you move? It's not just sitting on the couch." And so like he was like, "Okay, like you can get it." And so we saved up our money. Me and my brother went on it together. We didn't get it day one, but we actually, I don't remember why, but we were told by a game store they're going to have more on Black Friday. So we had our Thanksgiving, and then we got to the GameStop it was at a mall at like 2 a.m, and there was already 10 people lined up for this thing. but we were like super pumped. And I brought my DS, and it was like some of the best memories I've ever had because everyone had their DSs out. We're picto chatting. We were playing Mario Kart together through like download play. Like it was just such a wild time. This is such a different era. And then finally the guy comes to open the store. He said, all right, we have 10 Wii systems available. And we're number 11. So we're like, oh, I guess we're not getting one. But then my mom, being the social chatterbox that she is, happened to be talking with one of the, I think it was either the manager or someone who was worked at the store. And he was like, oh yeah, I have a friend who's in front of you in line. He already has one. So he convinced him to get out of line so that we could be number 10. And we got the last Wii that was available there.
Your mom's the best.
She is the best. It was so cool. And then we went home with, of course, Wii Sports, which, you know, everyone did. But then Twilight Princess was the first game, and I love that game to death. Though that is not my favorite game on the system, but I definitely had to share that memory because the Wii is such a special system just because of how it started, how we got it, and just the memories I had with it. But no, my favorite game is not Twilight Princess. It's a great Zelda game, but it is gonna be Mario Galaxy. I know it's and some of these games I'm picking definitely are like you might they're kind of they're like one of the best games in the system, but like man, that game just holds up. It's so fun. I have so many memories of just exploring every ounce of that world. I don't even know how to praise it anymore. It's one of the best Mario games ever made. Music was insane. Just cannot believe they got the full orchestrated soundtrack. The graphics blew my mind on a Wii, despite there being HD games out there on other systems. It just still, to me, was one of the best looking games out there. And yeah, so
it gave us Gusty Garden Galaxy as part of the OST.
Oh yeah, it
was probably the single best Nintendo song they ever made.
Seriously, and I have the app for the music because I've had the MSO subscription, and I love listening to the Mario Galaxy soundtrack, and especially the Gusty Gardens. But like every song on there is a banger. They're just so good. Anyway, that's my Wii story. For you, Ryan, what's it for you?
So I eventually cudgeled my parents into letting us get one, and so then we called around to 3 or 4 GameStops, and I eventually gave up because nobody had them, and my brother called one more because he really wanted it, which is so atypical for him. You know him, and it's just so atypical for him to persist after I give up. And the one he called happened to have one, and so we drove down. I don't even remember where it was. We drove down and we got it. And we got Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix at the same time. And we put a lot of time into both. But yeah, it's going to be tough picking. So for me, I'm just going to say Mario Galaxy is also my number one. I've also played Galaxy 2. I think Galaxy 1 is a better game. Though I do love Galaxy 2. But if I had to pick a runner-up, because that's sort of what we do when we both pick the same game. It's probably cheating, but Metroid Prime Trilogy is really, really good. If I can't pick that though, I guess it's gonna be Corruption, which is really funny because it is easily my least favorite of the Metroid Prime Trilogy, hands down, easily my least favorite. Though at the time, it was absolutely incredible. I just think that, especially because after playing Prime Remastered with new controls, going back to the Wii controls is really, really hard. But ultimately it is still a great game. I just think it's the weakest of the 3 personally.
Yeah, it's so funny because that was actually my first Prime game I got to play. And of course, back then I was super excited when any game could because the Wii came out and it was so much more underpowered than other systems. So any game that was really flashy and pretty on the Wii, I was super stoked about. So it was one of my runner-ups was Prime 3, Twilight Princess, and then Super Smash Bros. Brawl. So
I'm taking it back, actually. I'm sorry. I'm going to break the rules. I'm going to take it back. That is not my favorite game. I just remembered. My favorite game for the Wii is Silent Hill Shattered Memories.
Oh, yeah.
That is an excellent game. that is really good. So, which was one we played together.
Yep.
But that one beats Prime 3 for me, actually.
Yeah. No, that game was incredible.
We bought it because we were looking for a bad game or like at least a game that we could sort of like enjoy and make fun of together. It ended up being like really good.
Yeah, no, we were like shocked because we, just come off of playing Heavy Rain, which, I mean, isn't. I'm not gonna say it's like the worst game ever made, but definitely like super underwhelmed us, and especially because the ending was definitely not what we wanted, based on the characters we liked.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, no, that game we were so shocked by it. We were looking for like narrative-driven games too, so it wasn't like it was something we could easily play together by like even like working together. It's a great game for that. Great ending, great story, great gameplay. It plays super well. Super great game.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Another game that deserves a shout out from the Wii that probably very few people even know about is Zack and Wiki.
Yep.
That's a game
I haven't beaten it, but that was going to be on my list.
Yeah, I'm literally at the final level, but I still haven't beat it. So I need to go back and beat that game. But great game. It was recommended because back in the day with IGN, back when they had a little more passion for video games, I feel like, was Matt Casamassina and Mark Bozon were pushing that game really hard. And I remember being like, yeah, I'll try this game. And I was not disappointed. So definitely, if you somehow can find that game, pick it up, play it.
Absolutely. Lots of game recommendations.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so many. I just realized, look at the time of a podcast. We got to keep going. So after the Wii, so before Wii U, it was 3DS, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I make sure because my list is a little bit off, and I don't want to make the same mistake again. So 3DS. Pretty good follow-up to the DS. Definitely didn't hit the sales numbers, but it still had some incredible games. Very, very good games. I know you're a big fan of it. You really enjoyed the 3D.
Yeah, I did. I'm like the only person in the world who likes it.
I liked it. I liked it more once I got the new 3DS XL because the 3D tracking was so much better. But I had a lot of trouble with it with the original DS because it just the sweet spot was so hard to hit that I started having more headaches, and it killed the frame rate on certain games. So I always just went for the higher frame rate. But it was still just such a great system. What would you say your favorite game for the 3DS was?
So I changed it. Originally, I was going to say the Metroid 2 remake, Samus Returns. Mm-hmm. But I switched it to Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate.
Oh, yeah. I know. You played so much of that game.
Yeah, I have over 300 hours in that game, which probably isn't a lot for a lot of people. It's a lot for me.
Yeah.
And so I put a lot into that game. I still technically haven't beat everything in the end game, but it's really hard to go back to now after playing more recent Monster Hunters. But yeah, I love Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. It's, and I think it's the best one on the 3DS. Though I know some people would dispute that, but it's an excellent Monster Hunter game. But if you want to get into Monster Hunter, I would definitely recommend some of the more recent editions. This one's just more for nostalgia's sake, but that's my favorite. What about you?
For me, man, there's actually so many games, but I'm gonna have to go with Fire Emblem Awakening. Mm-hmm. That was such an interesting game because it was at a time where Fire Emblem seemed like it, because of the GameCube not selling well. It kind of the interest in the franchise was starting to dip, and I think they remembered them saying like this was basically their Hail Mary Fire Emblem game, so they just went all out on it, and it shows because that game is phenomenal. They made everything that you love about Fire Emblem better. The interactions, the characters, the story, the gameplay, the fight, everything is just so refined that it just revitalized the entire franchise. It's that good of a game that it brought back a franchise from near the brink of death. And now Fire Emblem is like a mainstream game that people look forward to. So that's my favorite. I played a lot of that. Runner-ups would be just Samus Returns, Link Between Worlds, and then Smash Brothers for 3DS, because that was the first time Smash Brothers became portable, and it just blew my mind that I could just play Smash Brothers on the go.
Yeah, absolutely. It honestly was a phenomenal handheld.
Yeah, I still have mine. Same with my DS. When I was a kid, I unfortunately would trade in systems and games because I didn't have a lot of money and I wanted games. But now that after the DS, I definitely stopped doing that. So I still have my DS Lite, my 3DS, and my Switch, my Wii U, my original Wii. So, but yeah, the 3DS I still love. Need to go back and actually play it a few more games. So, so now we go on to an unfortunate system that had some incredible games and had a lot of potential, but just bad marketing and bad timing for a lot of reasons. People always say it's because of the Wii U name, but I also think it's because the iPad had just come out a year before that, and that kind of changed the whole tablet market. You know, the fact that the Wii U tablet had to stay in the house, whereas the iPad could go anywhere, it definitely hurt the sales, but definitely the naming didn't help. But despite that, had some phenomenal games, most of which got ported to the Switch, but began life on the Wii U, and I still have mine, still love it. There's some features about it that I still wish they put in new systems, like the ability to control the TV as a remote.
Absolutely, that was really cool. I actually taught my mom how to use it because that was our primary media machine for a while after the internal like stuff for the our TV like stopped being supported, and so I dug out the Wii U and I'm like, okay, we can watch like Netflix through this or whatever. So I actually taught her how to use the gamepad. So it was actually like a remarkably like friendly machine for streaming for like people who didn't play games but like use smartphones, right? Because the touch screen is pretty intuitive now. But like definitely an underrated console for sure.
Yeah. So if I were to pick my favorite game from that system, which is really tough, but I'm going to have to say Pikmin 3. And I know it's on Switch. The deluxe version is arguably better, but I really loved how it used the tablet, the gamepad. It was super... I probably actually played it wrong, because apparently you're supposed to use the Wii Remote Nunchuck as like the ideal way to play it, and then use the gamepad just for like other stuff. But I used the touchscreen to actually throw Pikmin, and I just loved that game. It's actually the game that kind of got me into Pikmin. I loved the controls. I loved the concept. The three three heroes.
Yeah, captains.
Yeah, and it still holds up. Super fun. Pikmin 3, great game on the Wii U. And I'm glad it came to the Switch because it deserved to get more recognition and sales. And Ryan?
Absolutely. So I was also, of course, going to pick Pikmin 3. I mean, it's in the podcast name.
It's in the podcast name.
But, as a runner-up, I'm going to go with, and this may be surprising, but Nintendo Land.
Oh, yeah.
I really enjoyed Nintendo Land, specifically playing it with my wife, who's not as into video games as I am, but she loves Nintendo. And so being able to sort of introduce her to Metroid, to be able to introduce her to, and granted, like, the Metroid in there is very different from other games, but sort of like, games that we can play together that, one player has a significantly more complicated job than the other players, like worked very well for our respective skill levels. So for me, I would definitely have to pick Nintendo Land, and honestly, I kind of wish we'd get a sequel. I know that would be hard. I don't know. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it gets announced in April or something. But I thought it was a really cool idea that showcased a lot of Nintendo's games, and I think if that had been like, if that was essentially like the Wii U's like Switch like, or not Switch, Wii Sports. I don't know. Maybe things would have been different, but I know my Wii U didn't come with Nintendo Land, so.
Yeah, I think I bought mine specifically so I would get that because I've seen videos of people playing it, and I was just like, this looks amazing. And I really did want to have something that could show off the concept of what the gamepad was about. It's unfortunate that I feel like it was one of the only games on the Wii U that really showcased what the gamepad was about. Nintendo tried a couple times and I think failed. It ended up just being a glorified inventory screen on a lot of games, which not to say that was bad, because I really enjoyed having that in the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess games, which are in my top games, but I didn't really want to include them because they're remakes. I'm trying to avoid remakes in this list. But yeah, it's Nintendo Land was really fun. I remember playing that a lot, and I still actually kind of want to play it again with my kids because I think they'd get a kick out of it. I just got to find all my Wii remotes. So,
they would love Pikmin Adventure.
One game I do have to also shout out on the Wii U that I played a lot, and actually I almost put it as my number one game, but Pikmin 3 was just so good. But it's actually Splatoon. The first Splatoon is it's actually kind of insane because the Wii U was such a failure of a console, selling only 13 million units, and yet it spawned one of Nintendo's biggest franchises with the original Splatoon. It's kind of almost crazy to think that franchise started on that console because, and actually Nintendo has a habit of starting some of their biggest franchises on, consoles that sell poorly. The GameCube started Animal Crossing and Pikmin, and now they're two incredibly large franchises. Even the Prime games, that's a whole, even though it's not Metroid, it is a very specific style of Metroid that started on GameCube. So, which was a system that only sold like 21 million units. So, but yeah, Splatoon, I played a lot of it. I really enjoyed the multiplayer. I love the concept of it. I actually had a hard time getting into the newer ones because they started getting a little sweaty in the lobbies, where it wasn't as sweaty on the Wii U. So, but yeah, that was also a game I needed to shout out because it was really good. And in Mario Kart 8, despite Deluxe being definitely the better version,
Oh yeah.
I remember when that game came out, I just could not believe that they made Mario Kart look that good back when that came out. It was like truly when I realized like Nintendo has moved into the HD generation. So great game. Also, it's just so funny to think that Breath of the Wild was originally a Wii U game because I actually have the Breath of the Wild for Wii U and Switch, and it's funny going to play the Wii U version because you're like, wait, this is kind of how the game was meant to be played. It was designed around this gamepad, but they made it work. So, well, we need to wrap it up. So we're gonna do the final system that, of course, probably everybody knows, the Switch. Phenomenal system, probably Nintendo's best system they've ever made. If you look at their library of games, you look at the units sold, if you look at everything, Nintendo really hit it out of the park with this one. They just got it right. The Goldilocks system. So, gosh, how do you pick a favorite game, though? Because some of these are just absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah, like I think this is easily like, and we'll probably, I don't know, maybe we'll talk about this another time, but I think like if you had to pick a golden age for Nintendo, like this actually probably was it.
Yeah.
In terms of both having a huge install base, like a very successful console, and also having like an incredible library of games. Like this probably, and I know like we talked earlier about how the Game Boy Advance, is actually pretty competitive for that spot. But in terms of like keeping it going for 8 years, like that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, the fact that this system was still selling so well, even now, the fact that Mario Kart 8 is still one of their top selling games almost 8 years later is insane. It has a over 50% attach rate on the system, and the system sold 145 million units. That's insane. But we do need to pick one game that probably, and it doesn't have to be obviously the best game. It's your favorite game that really made its impact on you, game that you would look back and say, yeah, that's the game. And I already know yours, Ryan, so I'm going to let you go first.
It's Pikmin 4. It's of course Pikmin 4. Like, to nobody's surprise.
Yeah.
I think it is easily the best Pikmin game, though there are some things about 3 that I miss. And I think that would be an interesting discussion for another time. But I think Pikmin 4 is the best Pikmin game. I think, there are definitely some improvements that could be made on it. But for me, like, that was... like that is like my defining Switch game of like my favorite, though I would say if I had to pick a runner-up, it would probably be Metroid Dread, but like Pikmin 4 it is definitely my favorite Pikmin game. What about you?
It's definitely Pikmin perfected, and it's definitely my top game, though, because again, we're gonna go by the rules. I'm gonna pick a different one. And this is tough. This is really tough for me. But I'm going, and actually it's a toss-up between 2 games. And I'm going to have to go, oh man, this is really tough. I'm going to say Breath of the Wild over Tears of the Kingdom. Even though I think technically Tears of the Kingdom was a better game. I think it is arguably the best version in every single way. But I'm actually playing through my 3rd playthrough of Breath of the Wild right now. Just finished all the Divine Beasts, and I just cannot believe just how good this game holds up. And the reason I give it the title over Tears of the Kingdom is just because it is the pioneering game. It's the one that just absolutely changed the formula for Zelda, and it's just so good. Everything about it, like just how intuitive it is, how open and freeing it is. I just haven't played a game quite like it, other than its sequel, where you really truly feel like you can do anything and go anywhere. There's games
Yeah.
where there's like a lot of like story freedom and whatnot, but this game just like, man, I could just climb anything. I can just, just I don't know. It's just crazy. So, but it was very close between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I do think Tears of the Kingdom is a better game. Pikmin 4 obviously is just perfection personified. Dread is phenomenal. Metroid Prime Remastered, but again, I'm trying to keep remakes, but Remastered is such a good game, such a good version of the game. Smash Ultimate, definitely the best Smash Brothers. Love it. Played a lot of it with friends. Mario
Still
Odyssey.
haven't played it.
I know, that's crazy to me. We got to do like a video of us playing it together. And Mario Odyssey is just, again, such an incredible version of Mario. Gosh, I know there's some franchises I'm missing. Pokemon I wasn't a big fan of on the Switch. I'm just going to be flat out honest.
I think Legends Arceus was good.
Oh, Arceus, sorry. That one was good. I played that game and I'm like, please, Game Freak, go this
just
direction.
more of this.
More of this. This is the direction. You're not there yet. It definitely has its problems, but oh my gosh, is that like a step in the right direction, in my opinion. I think it's...
Yeah, compared to Sword and Shield.
Sword and Shield was Arceus is everything I thought Sword and Shield was going to be.
Yeah.
And Scarlet and Violet is, I actually haven't played it, but I heard it's good in concept, but it just his performance was so bad that it was pretty shameful. So I hope that they've learned their lesson, and the next system they push it, or they refine their games a little more.
Well, we might find out in about a month.
Right. Well,
we might learn more about Legends ZA.
Yeah, the Pokemon event will be happening before the April Direct for the Switch 2. So that'll be interesting. Well, holy cow, that was a lot. It actually took a lot longer than I thought just to get through that. But I did.
Yeah, it did.
I did want to kind of stop a little bit on some of the systems, especially the ones that we have good memories with, because there's just so much history there. So, some of it's just like memories we have separately. Some of it's memories we have together as friends, and it's just insane the legacy of games. And now we get to see what happens with the Switch 2. What comes out with that. I'm very excited to see what Nintendo's next generation looks like. So
yeah, I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised in April by what we get to see. I imagine we're going to get a pretty good launch lineup, but we'll have to see.
Well, we were going to finish this with our top 5 Nintendo games, and I realized I didn't create a list, so I'd have to come up with it very quickly. I don't know if you made yours.
I did make mine, but I think that can be. We can do that for another time.
I think so. Just stay tuned for a future podcast where we'll talk about our top 5 Nintendo games, but probably also our top 5 games. You might be surprised what games are how they change from those 2 lists. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you guys for sticking with us through this whole thing. I hope that some of this, going down memory lane. Obviously, we dated ourselves a little bit. For some of you, we're very old. For some of you, we're still very young because we didn't, grow up with the NES or something. But, I think that for the most part, we've lived through a good chunk of Nintendo's history. And very glad I did. Glad I grew up a Nintendo kid.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter when you jumped on the train. It just matters that you're on board. How about that?
Exactly. Well, I'm trying to do the history lesson with my kids, and they're not very old. But I'm like, you got to learn. You got to try these games.
It's okay. My kid will go through Nintendo boot camp when they eventually get here.
Yeah.
When we eventually have one.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Ryan, for this fun stroll down memory lane.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone. Until next time, we're the Super Dandori Bros. I'm Leighton. He's Ryan. And we'll talk to you again next time. Bye.
See ya.